Welcome to the financial webinar. My name is Bakiba, and I will be your operator for today's call. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Later, we will conduct a question-and-answer session. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I want to call over to Rebecca Rivera. Rebecca, you may begin.
And welcome to our financial 2015. Welcome back to those of you I met at mid-year, and for those who I haven't met, I look forward to meeting you guys in Phoenix, Arizona for our annual convention. Let's take a second to introduce Dev Prasad. He's joining us on the call. Dev, if you want to just say hi. He's a resource for us here at NSNA, and if you have any questions, he's in contact. Dr. Chino, the Executive Director, will be joining us later on in the call, and we look forward to hearing from her in the Q&A session. So we'll get started. We're going to start by just going over the duties of a treasurer. Some of you may be new to your positions. If you're not, these are just a helpful reminder. So a treasurer is to act as the custodian of all the funds. You're responsible for accuracy and safekeeping of all financial books and records of the association. Whatever committees you to, which is typically the Finance Committee, maybe the Fundraising Committee. Draft operating budget. Put her next to this one because we'll touch on it later. It's pretty important. 4, keep current and accurate financial records, including records on your members' due revenues, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and ledgers. The second of the duties. 6, ensure that all accounts are compiled, reviewed, or audited by a CPA at the end of each fiscal year. Number 7, very important, ensure that all your federal, state, and local tax returns are filed on time. Responsibility for fundraising projects. You want to make sure that you are keeping an eye on money during busy convention at times. And then I want to pay attention to, just talking to some of you at mid-year, it seems like this is a concern. Ensure that the formal policies and procedures have been documented to facilitate the duties of the treasurer. Some of you are questioning authorities you should have compared to what authority you're currently given. This is going to be the first place you're going to start to determine whether you guys are following your policies and procedures. So if you take these policies and procedures, sometimes called bylaws, that's going to be a good line for you to start with. And remember, if you don't agree with what's in those policies and procedures, directors can amend those. So just start next to that one as well. Okay. Since it's so important, we're going to take a second to this. Directors is responsible for determining and approving the policies and procedures for the organization's finances. So take into consideration the size of your organization to determine the amount of people who will be approving these procedures. Typically, with our student organizations, it's the entire board who decides on how the organization's finances are spent. Now's the best time to decide how you guys are going to keep your records, whether it be online with QuickBooks or in a binder. Who will be reviewing your financial records? If someone has a friend who's a CPA or someone who's a student who's in accounting, things like that. So now's a good time to just go ahead and work out all those details so that later on you guys don't run into any complications. Okay, so now we're going to go through some of the internal controls. These internal controls are what you as a treasurer and a board need to have working and defined so that you guys don't run into any complications. What this means is that because of susceptibility to errors, misappropriation, and other irregularities, the control placed over the handling of the association's funds plays an important role in any system of internal control. So think of this just like in our nursing life, how certain high-risk medications, they were double signatures to be signed out of the PICSIS, blood transfusions, you have 2 RNs there to witness. You want to make sure that you have these internal controls that way, being in the best way possible for your members. Okay, so what I'm going to do for an internal control is establish and maintain bank accounts and financial institution accounts in the name of the association. whoever has the credit card or the checkbook, it should be in the name of your school or state association, come to the individual name of a member. If you operate a little bit differently and you maybe get your funds from the dean or student government association, it is your fiduciary responsibility to about the account and whose name is on it, just to ensure everything's working correctly and no one's name on the account that shouldn't be. We all know there's a turnover of officers every year, maybe sometimes more than that. So you make sure that you're going to your bank to fill a new corporate authorization resolution. It's going to just change the signatures that are authorized on your account. And you want the chair, president, and maybe your faculty advisor signatures on there. Make sure that no one is checks that is not authorized. This one's a little more simple than some ones we've been talking about. You just want to select a bank branch that has branches in major cities. That's easy for some of you guys who are on state boards and live all over the state. You guys have access to deposit or send back and forth a little bit easier. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, typical main banks like those. Move back to signatures. So be at least 2 authorized signers on the account, and then you want at least 2 signers on every check, but preferably 3 people authorized to help expedite payments if one person is out of town, sick, unavailable. But you want to make sure that you have both signatures on these checks to make sure that no one is writing a check to themselves. Right. Then just a helpful reminder to understand the importance of having authorized signers in our nursing world as handing out narcotics and witnessing blood transfusions as in the accounting world. So important, may be dealing with someone's life, but it's still important. So stamps. Endorsement stamps is a way to keep your organization safe. Checks written to your organization. If you stamp checks that you'll be given, it turns into deposit only, meaning these can't be deposited for cash. So it's just, if the check's invaluable to anyone if they happen to pick it up or they do get lost. So that's just a good way to have over your account. And once again, when you put an endorsement stamp on a check, it does only be deposited to that specific account and be cashed. And order endorsement stamps online or through your bank. And as you hear, you want to have your state organization's name and bank account number, the words for deposit only. Okay. So stray away from using debit cards, because with debit cards, there's ATMs everywhere and cash can be taken out. Once cash is taken out, we don't really have a paper trail of where it's being spent. So if your organ does use credit cards, you want to make sure that you're monitoring those monthly statements, more than one person looking over them, to make sure that what's being spent on the credit card was approved by the board and is in the minutes and all those good things. But credit cards, we strictly advise to not use those because of the withdrawal. Okay, so the board should establish policies that require all expense receipts and signed vouchers that approve the expense. This should be reflected as motions in the board of directors meetings. A couple of key terms that you're hearing me keep using throughout this presentation. the policy that we talked about right in the beginning, how important it is to make sure you locate those policies and look them over. And you have in your policies all the receipts and vouchers reflected as the minutes state. So during Board of Directors meetings, it should have expenses. That way, be no question about what was spent and why it was spent. And if all this is making your head spin and you're getting a little overwhelmed, just take a deep breath, because like I said at the beginning, once you set up your policies and procedures, it will take care of everything else that we're going over right now. It's a good way to just get right in the beginning. Okay, so another thing, our organizations have a lot of students. We all have different time schedules, and nursing school is a little time consuming. So you want to make sure that deposits are made on a timely basis. It's hard to keep track of a budget if people aren't depositing checks. You know, you write them if they're depositing them down the road. You just want to make sure that you're keeping a detailed record of who you guys write checks to. May seem pretty obvious, but it's still important. Cash, checks, receipts be kept in secure place and locked up. Funds collected at the convention meetings and fundraising activities must be counted with 2 people present, and both of them should sign off on the report of receipts. We all know how crazy convention can get, and running all over everywhere, going through the exhibit hall, but you want to make sure you try to take a glance at the convention schedule before you get started, and make sure there's a time where 2 of you, preferably 3, have a faculty advisor with you, can sit down and keep track of all the money you guys are bringing in, make sure it's safe. The last thing you want to do is go to convention, sell all your wonderful fundraising stuff, and then a couple checks. So sounds like a no-brainer, but that one is often overlooked and then a little bit crazy. Okay, to our bank statements. They should be inspected monthly by the president and the treasurer to make sure that they're accurate and that transactions that occurred were approved by the board. You want to be doing a bank recommendation form month. That way you're just making sure all in a row, all your money coming in and going out, it should be there. So your batch include all of the board minutes in your treasurer's report. In your treasurer's report, you'll have your bank balances, annual operating budget with current revenues and expenses, statement, and a couple other documents if they apply to your organization. And attachments must be properly filed with the state association and sent to NSNA. So what control is saying is that you should have your approved expenses. So be part of the treasurer's report. That's about what were spent if anyone has a question about it. And it's your responsibility to make sure that your state association has these minutes as well as NSNA. They're providing a really good paper trail in case there's any discrepancy. And for that last slide, it may have seemed like a lot to include your board minutes, all your bank balances, and your operating budget, and all these things, but it's very important. It's the same thing as just having your patient's chart. The important takeaway is to document absolutely everything. And your documentation can be your monthly balances, your minutes that have your boards voting on them. Okay, so those are all just kind of overarching things, internal controls to make sure that your organization is running in the best way possible. Now we're going to move on to your tools and documents what you specifically are working with, for operating budget, reserve fund, reports, account software, expense vouchers, and checkbook. So it's fiduciary responsibility of the Board of Directors to receive financial reports at all regular board meetings, and that members receive a financial report at the annual meeting of the membership. So if you're sitting over there saying, what the heck is fiduciary responsibility? Really fun word to say, but it's a legal duty to act solely in a party's interest. So it's your legal duty to act solely in the interest of your members. So it's not only very important, but it's great word to use during interviews, first dates, parties, etc. I'm just saying don't use those words during parties. Each board meeting, the treasurer should be reporting on the budget and its current standing to the Board of Directors. This is something I think after talking to you guys at mid-year may be overlooked, but during each of those board meetings, as long as the treasurer goes through what their current standing is, that will help alleviate any problems later on down the road. It's another way to tie this in and help it make sense, just as we are responsible patient advocacy for our patients, board of directors, fiduciary responsibility. If you're kind of confused about what you should be going over during your financial report, your financial report will include your latest revenue and expense statement, your account balances, the investment report your organization has an investment portfolio. NSNA does recommend a no-risk investment kind of investment. If you are going to do an investment, you'll have a written policy, and there'll be a lot more involved in that. So we really just recommend for you to stick to a no-risk investment like insured CDs, things like that. So if you don't have that last bullet mark, that's totally fine. You're not doing anything wrong. Excuse me. You don't have to have an investment account. Okay, so getting budget. Depending on your organization's fiscal year, the treasurer will prepare a proposed annual operating budget for board approval. This is important because it's not only the treasurer's responsibility, it's the entire board's fiduciary responsibility. Before you propose your annual operating budget, if the treasurer want to send out an email and say, send me what you think your specific position, like the fundraising committee, to send you how they're trying to spend on T-shirts, how much they shipping their fundraising items to Arizona is going to cost. It doesn't all fall on the treasurer's shoulders. You guys work as a team, and you populate this proposed annual operating budget. Whatever you guys have as an organization, they all kind of revolve around what money is in the account for what to achieve. So if someone's very passionate about a goal they have, just find them to be just as passionate about providing you with the proposed annual budget for their little segment. That way you can put it all together and get everyone's goals accomplished. Down to the second bullet, annual auditor's report is what you'll do at your convention, and you'll go over the auditor's report to report to members that you guys are in good standing. And that last bullet, review of investment guidelines. And each board can revise the investment guidelines. So if a board before you left investment guidelines that you don't believe in, you still have that ability to amend those. Okay. The financial report at the annual membership meeting will be a bit different than what at your finance committee meeting, and that it is at your let's say you guys meet monthly just for your organizations. The membership meeting is when the state treasurer financial report that year's tenure. And so this will be based on your state's bylaws, but include the annual auditor's report. And if you don't have an annual auditor's report, it should include the end-of-year revenue and expense statement, budget approved by the board of directors, and if you have an investment report, that investment report. You have less detail when you present to the annual membership meeting as you would when you report to your finance committee. So that makes sense because you just give them an overarching of the budget, and they do have that right because they do dues and all that. So financial report, annual membership meeting, you want to make sure you're including these three things, and based on what your state bylaws say you need to report off to your members. So the events that I've been talking about, we're going to go over the records, audits, income tax returns, membership dues, investment guidelines, things like that. We won't go over every one of these, but we'll hit on a couple that are most important. And at the end, if you have any questions, just make sure you're writing them down. You can remember to ask them if I don't cover it. Everyone's big question and big worry, your income tax form. So if you gross receipts of $50,000 or less, you may be required to electronically submit a 90N form, which is also the e-postcard if any of you guys have already done this. You do this at the close, it's 15th of the 5th month after the close of your fiscal year. Now, fiscal year vary. So you're operating on the right fiscal year, and math to make sure that you're completing the 990N form by the 15th of the 5th month after the close of fiscal year. So your fiscal year ended December 31st, 2010. You will have to file a 990N form by May 15th, 2011. These 990N forms are online, like I said, and they're easy to fill out. The important part to know here is that tax-exempt status will be revoked as a filing date of the third year if the filing requirement is not met for 3 consecutive years. So if you took over for an organization and you're kind of starting from the bottom up, to go back and see, hopefully they have record in whatever the previous treasurer gave you. You want to make sure that you're checking if tax-exempt status is going to be revoked because someone hasn't filed in the previous years. Okay, and then this is where I was talking about your finance committee meeting agenda. Is a little bit different than what you present at your annual state convention. We have some sample agendas in the workbooks that we've given you guys, but this is going to be typically the treasurer, president, and if you have a faculty advisor as well. And this is when you'll go over in great detail all expenditures, anything that you want to vote on, and your progress as an organization. Let's say, and you want to say that you've accomplished 70% of your fundraising goal, then that's wonderful, and you know how hard you guys have worked. And in the opposite direction, if you realize that you guys are only at 30% of your fundraising goal, things with the finance committee that you guys can kind of talk about these and figure out wrong. That way you can present to your board of directors a version and give them just the important parts besides analyzing numbers. Okay, so incorporation. If you're unsure about the incorporation status of your state organization, you can call the IRS. We are right here. I recommend calling very early in the morning. Let's say it's one of those mornings you get up and you're trying to, crank out that last care plan or med flow sheet. Go ahead and just tell them, put them on speakerphone, drink your coffee. They're just less busy early hours, and I know we're up very early for nursing, so that's helpful. And we'll incorporation a little detail here. So your unincorporated or incorporated does have a difference. The unincorporated association provides the greatest flexibility with the lowest operating cost. However, and this is a pretty big however, the fact that the association is not incorporated leaves it and its members without the protection of the limited liability inherent in a corporation. So what I'm saying is that if you're not incorporated, your members can be reliable for contracts, negligent acts, debt, etc. So to figure out what this of your state organization is, and from there. And if you find out that you are not incorporated, incorporating laws do vary from state to state, so that's kind of a tricky question for us to answer for all states in general because the laws vary. So if you can contact a local attorney, that's going to be your best bet to provide you advice. I know some of the state bar associations, like I know the State Bar of Georgia has a pro bono officer who is willing to look over things like that. So that experience I've had, if you want to contact your state bar, if you're a local attorney, we're hiring attorneys because our organizations don't make exactly that much money. It's still a very important thing to look over, and that can be overwhelming. So if you do need help with that, just let us know. So tax exemption, so where it can get a little bit confusing, so just stick with me. Two different statuses, a 501c3, your organization as a charitable organization. If you're a 501c3, it can bring donors tax credits for donations that they give you. So if you're trying to get vendors to come out to your conventions, get donations for different fundraising events, if you are a 501c3, this allows them to tax credit for whatever they donate. If you're a 501c6, that's primarily supported by membership dues and other income from activities substantially related to its exempt purpose. So this is a majority of organizations because we do get money from membership dues and from our conventions to our business. This doesn't allow tax credit for donors, but that's because it's still easy to work out. But just anyone has a question, if you're talking to a vendor and they want to know, do I get a tax credit for this? You could just, if you're a 501c6, say, no, I'm sorry, you do not, and then convince them to donate anyway. Okay, so if you refer to our workbook here for tax exemption, form recognition of exemption from federal income tax, to obtain these documents from the IRS. So there's a website, and it's a form you can download as a PDF. And it also has instructions, once again, it's having to call the IRS, going to the website, downloading the form. I promise you that you guys can do it. It's not rocket science, and if you can get through school, you can absolutely do this. Apply for exemption under that 501c3 or the 501c6, and which one of those you'll be applying for. And the caveat here is that these forms require for you to have an employer identification number. I'll go ahead and go to the next screen. You have an EIN number to a bank account already, so chances are your association does have an EIN number. And if you don't know if you have one, you can call that number to find out, but most likely somebody in your organization, maybe a faculty advisor, will know that EIN number because you will need that when applying. And you keep all copies of these completed forms for your organization's permanent records. It's important because, as I said earlier, if it's been 3 years since your organization has filed, you need to know that. So it's important to have these records so that the incoming treasurers will know as the years go on. I have a couple minutes before our Q&A. I'm going to go back to touch on a couple things. I just wanted to make sure that we would be able to get through entire PowerPoint. So give me a second to backtrack. I wanted to go back to policies and procedures really fast because of all the complications that people have had. If you can't find your organization's bylaws, they not even have any. There are resources on NSNA's website about how to write these bylaws and policies and procedures. We don't expect everybody to just be a professional at writing these. It's our first time, so don't be intimidated by reading through policies and procedures. It's way easier to understand than any kind of fizz. So I have full confidence you guys will be able to go through your policies and procedures and figure out what you change. I said at board meetings you'll have to file a motion to amend the policies and procedures, and that's documented very clearly in your minutes. So moving forward, if any expenses are made that are used by the new policy, it's very stated on there. Okay, click through to, for the chief officers to file that new corporate authorization resolution, it's been brought to attention that some organizations may not be going through this process. So if you're unsure about this, I would contact your faculty advisor to make sure that you guys are up to date and have signed that form, that your banks have the correct authorized signatures, not old signatures. Okay, and back to this slide really fast. Should be at least 2 signers on each check. If you are at the state level and you guys are spread out among the states, this is proposing that operating annual budget comes in handy because you're planning way ahead. You can write these checks and sign them, and not too far in advance, but at least you know when you need to be signing them. That way you'll have the money you need when they need it. You already know that you'll be spending X amount come for convention. That kind of helps you guys have signatures on there if there is a issue between the 2 authorized signers. And then once again, we recommend having at least 3. That way you live closer to each other. But if the distance is an issue and everyone is separate, planning at a time and having a lot of communication and having that proposed annual budget done in good detail up front is really going to help you overcome not to have 2 signatures on each check. Skip through a couple of slides and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So start thinking of some really awesome questions because you guys always impress me with your questions. For expense that should be reflected as motions in minutes of the Board of Directors meetings. Another question we ran into at the local or state level during your meetings, most should be made, even if you guys at the local level don't fully follow Robert's rules, most still should be made the expending of money because you want to have that in formal writing. And when you motion, it has, who was in attendance, who voted yes. That way, if there's a discrepancy, you have a really good paper trail to back yourself up with. And we don't recommend vote for things over the internet or phone. Always in person is best. There's been times where we've had to call, not emergency, but just quick board meetings to vote on expenses. It's better just to get minutes, vote on something, and leave. Comparing something over the internet, over the phone, and then having a little bit more area and not knowing if people pay attention to what they're voting for. Okay. And almost done here. The last one I wanted to touch on, bank statements being carefully inspected monthly by the president and treasurer. You're reporting off at your board of directors meetings. If you're using accounting software like QuickBooks, it's very easy to pull a report off. You follow the prompts. It takes all the work of this quote financial report that you have to give at these directors meetings out of it. And I have recently looked on there, and QuickBooks now offers an e-version. So remember, you would have to buy the software for one use and download it on your computer. There's now an e-version. It's way cheaper. I want to say it's like $9.99 a month or $7.99. It's very cheap, very user-friendly, and it'll just help you inspect those bank statements. You can even have them uploaded to QuickBooks to just automatically populate. So using QuickBooks is a great, great way to keep yourself organized and keep good with everything and make your life easier when you're trying to print off these reports and go through them for your monthly meetings. Right there, and then the income treasurer also has a very easy way to see what was spent during the last year. And like I said, I was really excited to see that there is an e-version now. So software is not even an issue. You can just get online and use the e-version if you want to. The apps and all that good stuff. Apps with caution, obviously, I'm sure they're certified, but just having bank apps scared me. So take a look at QuickBooks. There's a free trial. Sure of how to use it. There's frequently asked questions and things on there, and it's very, very easy to go through. Or if you have accounting friends, you can go ahead and ask them. Oh, that was the last thing I want to touch on was the QuickBooks accounting software. We'll go ahead and open it up for Q&A, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you have a question, please press star, then 1 on your touch-tone phone. If you will be removed from the queue, please press the pound sign or the hash key. There will be a delay before the first question is announced. If you're on a speakerphone, you may need to pick up the handset first before pressing the numbers. Once again, if you have a question, please press star, then 1 on your touch-tone phone. And bye for our first question. Okay, right now we have no audience questions.
Thank you. If you're hesitant about asking a question, this is a safe zone. You will go ahead and ask it right. There's no dumb questions. Being a treasurer isn't common knowledge. It's not something we're professional at. We're all nursing students. So no question is dumb, and we'd definitely like to get your questions answered, and someone else may have that same question. So just feel free to ask. If I missed anything that you want me to go over in more detail,
No, thank you very much, especially the QuickBooks review. That was good.
Okay. So we do have our first question, and it's going to come from Ignacio Gonzalez. Please go ahead with your question or comment. Ignacio, your line is open. Okay, Ignacio Gonzalez?
Yes, hi.
Hi, your line is open. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Yes, I have a question on the workbook. Was that something we got at mid-year or where? I'm not aware of the workbook.
It's the Treasurer's Workbook, we handed out at mid-year, but it's also online. If you go online to NSNA, you can from the website, and it just kind of goes into more detail everything that we covered.
Yeah, I also sent it yesterday via email to everyone who registered, but I will send it back today after program.
The question about it that I covered that I said was in the workbook that you want me to go over?
Oh, I was just wondering about the workbook.
Oh.
Our next question is going to come from Emilia Bialy. Please go ahead with your question or comment.
Amelia, I was just wondering about the whole debit card. I know that my association right now is using a debit card, and I just should not be using one because I know we debit card. So I was kind of confused about that whole thing when you talked that.
So who's the debit card? What name is the debit card in?
I have a credit. There's a debit card in my name and then one in my faculty advisor's name.
So could you ATM and pull out cash? Is there a PIN number associated with it? Yeah, there's a PIN number, but also on the card it says Connecticut Student Nurses Association. Oh, I would prefer a credit card, but Dev, what would you say for them having that? It's just you guys liable and kind of for if that card is lost and someone, can hack into it and go to an ATM.
Okay.
Kind of stuff.
The main reason that we frown on using debit cards is that there's no chargeback issue. If there's a charge that was made, it's very, very hard to go back and retrieve that lost funds. And also, as Rebecca mentioned, it's very easy to draw cash on that. However, if you have to have a debit card, if it's the entire board is very adamant about having it, suggest that the entire board review in detail the monthly statements and also review, as Rebecca mentioned, the minutes of the meetings that approved the expenses. So there should be that review, a very rigid overview process in place.
Also make sure we're reviewing the bank statements at every
Entire board, yes.
Okay.
So if your faculty advisor, the way your organization has it set up where it wouldn't be that easy to switch over to a credit card, your thing to do would just be to, look at the statements really well and just be careful when traveling, conventions and things that it doesn't get lost.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And at this time, we have no additional questions.
Would you like to make any concluding remarks, or?
You could go ahead and thank everyone. Thank everyone for, on behalf of myself and Diane.
Okay. So thank you all for
Also,
attending.
I'm sorry, just one quick thing. If they do have a question after the conclusion of the webinar, then email me. And I will also, as I promised, email a handbook to everyone who has, who registered. And also, they should have access to my email for them to email me any questions that they want later on.
Okay. So one little closing remark, just keep in that NSNA does need your state's minutes on a monthly basis. So if you haven't been emailing those, go ahead and online there's a form to submit them. If you're on our website, you'll find the form to electronically submit your minutes and make sure that you have all the required documentation attached to those minutes, especially important as we approach the convention in Phoenix, Arizona, and I look forward to seeing you guys there. If you have any questions about fundraising ideas, if you guys are looking to raise a little money to maybe send some people to convention, still email me. I can shoot you some ideas that have worked for other organizations in the past. And good luck with school, whatever semester you're in nursing school, and thank you for attending this webinar.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may now disconnect.